Yes, it's visible.
All right, guys. Yeah, thank you all for joining. First of all, like before we begin with the session, so just want to ask, like, how many of you all have worked on Sitecore Headless? Is there an count?
Hi Manoj, I've worked on this with
Okay,
the Vue.js. I worked on this headless CMS.
all right. So, is there anyone like who have worked on Next.js Headless? All all right then. So today's session is based on like I'll be going through the unleashing the power of forms in Sitecore Headless with Next.js. So before we begin with the session, let's talk about the agenda first. All right. So let's go. So what all we yeah okay. So before that, about me. So my name is Manoj Chopkar. I am working as a senior software engineer with Aspire Infolabs. I worked on Sitecore 9.3 and above versions with SXA, and currently working on headless and XM cloud applications. That's all. All right. So agenda for today's session is, so what all we are going to cover is, first we'll talk about what is Sitecore Forms. I hope everyone here has worked on Sitecore Forms, so they might be aware of what is Sitecore Forms. So we'll see just a quick introduction of what is Sitecore Forms. Then what we are going to cover is how to use Sitecore Forms in headless solution with Next.js. Uh, there are two ways to do it. So first is using the site JSS headless form package, and second way is using embeddable forms. Then we are going to see what is JSS headless forms, and we are going to look into what is Sitecore embeddable forms. Then after going through these two approaches, we'll go through a comparative analysis between Sitecore JSS forms and Sitecore embeddable forms. Also, we'll see like how can we integrate third-party forms inside our headless application. All right then. Since many of us have not worked on Next.js as of now in this webinar, so I'll just go through the basic terminologies which we are going to use it inside our webinar. So basic terminologies, what is Next.js? Next.js basically is a framework that is built on React.js. All right, React.js itself is a library. All right, so we'll be using Next.js. Then we'll be using SSR. You'll see like I'll be talking more about SSR, SSG in this session. So you'll see about like me talking about SSR. So what is SSR? SSR is server-side rendering. Server-side rendering means your application or your page is getting rendered on each request whenever a request is passed on. So that is server-side rendering. We can call it as a dynamic rendering as well. All right. So what is SSG? Static site generation. So static site generation is what? So whenever your next application is built, your next application is getting built, this these pages are getting built at that time only during the next build. So this is known as static site generation. We can have it like we can use it where we are having a rich content, like especially for the blogs and all, where there are only a content that need not to be changed dynamically. Then we'll be talking about then I'll be talking about REST layout service and GraphQL layout service. So just to give you a background introduction of what these tools are. So Sitecore Headless provides us two ways to get data through the layout service. So one is REST layout and second is GraphQL layout service. So this is only the basic that is all you need to know about it. Let's not go deep into it. What is REST? What is the difference between GraphQL and all? But these are the two services which Sitecore Headless provides us to get the data. That's all. All right. Then we'll begin with the first thing. What is Sitecore Forms? All right. So many of us might have used Sitecore Forms. So I'll give a quick introduction about Sitecore Forms. It is basically a tool which is available inside our Sitecore Launchpad. And what it helps us, what it helps. So it helps the content author to create forms, collect data, analyze it. All right. So that is what the use of Sitecore form is. All right, then where it is situated, it is inside our launchpad, inside our Sitecore. All right. So that was a quick introduction about Sitecore forms. So let's go into the first way of implementation of Sitecore Forms inside our Next.js application. So the first way is using the JSS/headless forms. All right. So what is JSS/headless forms? So it's a package that implements framework agnostic helpers. All right. So if it is a package, that means we need to install it. Simple. And what is framework agnostic helpers? Framework agnostic helpers means it is like being independent of any of the technology or framework. All right. So this package deals with the framework agnostic helpers to deal with the Sitecore API, Sitecore Form API basically. Now what this package uses? So package make use of form service REST APIs. We talk about it inside our terminology, form service REST API. All right. This is provided by Sitecore Headless Service Model. Then what is form service and why it is used? So form service like Sitecore Headless model providers many services, out of which Sitecore Forms is one of the service that help us to integrate forms inside our headless application. All right. So then how are these forms integrated in the front end? So forms are integrated through the API that gets data through the layout service. Here the layout service is the REST API layout service using rendering content resolver. Right. So just try to recall these points. Form service REST API, rendering content resolver. Will be connecting the small points, small dots towards the further of our presentation. Now what this API accept? API accept the form submission and return us the JSON data. All right. In REST service. The endpoint is API JSS form builder. So if you inspect the network tab, you'll be able to see it like it hits this API point endpoint. All right. Then let's understand how the form is rendered on a browser. All right. So understanding the browser sidecore flow when using Sitecore Forms in headless application. So we'll see it through this pictorial representation. Just try to focus on this browser and Sitecore itself and this arrow. So browser basically gets the data from gets layout service data from the Sitecore. So if we are using the JSS form package, that means we are using here REST layout API service to get the data from Sitecore. Sitecore in terms return us the layout data plus the form schema data. All right. So now the schema is getting rendered using the JS. So JS renders this form schema to the HTML. Right. Then user fills out forms. Then again post the data to Sitecore. Sitecore in turns, if there are if there is any submit action to perform, save or whatsoever, it performs that action. And then again in turn it returns the schema plus the next step if it is any, and this cycles goes on. Right. So this is basically how the Sitecore Forms is getting rendered to your browser in your headless application. All right. So before we like now we'll start with the prerequisite of using Sitecore Forms or using Sitecore JSS Forms, headless forms inside our headless application. Right. So the prerequisite is your Next.js app service must use REST layout service, as we have talked about this REST layout service. All right. And the second prerequisite is Next.js app must use SSR, that must be server side rendering, that is like dynamic rendering, etc. All right. So these are the two prerequisites when you are going to implement Sitecore Forms with JSS form package or headless form package. JSR and headless are the same thing. So let's go to the implementation of headless forms. So the first step is to create a Next.js app, and like whenever you create a Next.js app, so there either you create it inside using a single command by passing the parameters, or like if you create an npx create Sitecore CLI application, the command Next.js app. So there you'll have an option to select SSR or SSG while creating the application. So make sure you're using SSR. and you're using REST layout service. Again, this option comes up, pop-ups, when you're creating a Next.js app. All right. So we won't have this demo in this session because we'll extend the timeline for this, but we'll plan it for another time in upcoming month. So since the headless forms is a package, we need to install it. And since I'm since I'm demoing it using the Next.js, so you can install the package using npm install Sitecore JSS, JSS Forms CLI, JSS Forms, and again Sitecore JSS, JSS React Forms. So basically, these two are two different packages. I clubbed. You need to create a Next.js app, a Next.js component inside your application, Next.js application, headless application. Then further, you need to add a config. I'll show you what all we need to add it to prevent the course and 404 errors. And then last, you can test your form in corrected mode. Right. So let's see the implementation. Just give me a second. All right. So this is the Next.js implementation of the Sitecore JSS Forms. All right. So I'll just explain you this code quickly. So this is where we are using importing the Sitecore. We are using importing the forms from the React JSS forms, and then we are using the React next router here and Sitecore API key. Then we are rendering it. You are creating it this application, this rendering, the TSX rendering, and using this form tag, which is imported from Sitecore JSS forms. So as of now, we have passed 4 props to it: forms, Sitecore API host, Sitecore API key, and on redirect URL. All right. So this is the basic rendering, JSS forms rendering. So before that, then after that, what you or before creating a Next.js implementation, either you can create a you need to create a layout JSON rendering inside your Sitecore application. And while you create a JSON rendering inside your Sitecore application, make sure you use rendering content resolver, forms content resolver, plus you make sure you use the forms data source in the data source template field. Let's go to the Next.js config. This is the Next.js config which we need to add to prevent the 404 or course error. All right. So let's see like what points to consider when implementing forms using the JSS package. So the first is, like, when you are using the application, your application must be SSR while you are using this JSS form package. And the second thing is you must be using the REST layout service. These are the points when you can consider when implementing JSS form package. All right. Now let's see the common error. This is the common error, the anti-forgery cookie token issue. This usually comes up when you try using form Sitecore forms inside your headless application. So before going for the solution, let's understand what is the root cause of this issue. So the root cause of this issue is simple, like either you must be using SSG to render your Sitecore forms, or you are missing any of the prerequisites. All right. So once you use the prerequisites, that is your application Next.js must be SSR. You must be using REST layout GraphQL service. Then you must have that config added your next.config.js file. So then this this will help you resolve this issue. All right. So any queries in this part? Is there any questions on this part? All right, then I'll take it as no. Then all right, then. So since now we have seen about the JSS form package and we have talked about the prerequisites of it, that is using REST layout GraphQL service and SSR, your application, Next.js application must be SSR. Now, just to give a background again, Next.js offers us different with methods to render your Next.js application, all right? So there are SSG, SSR, ISR. So let's not talk about ISR as of now. We have talked about SSG and SSR, so we'll focus on this two only. So now let's say if someone wants to, like if there is a requirement where your application must be SSG only, and you might be using GraphQL or REST layout service. So what is the case? So in that case, does it means like we can't use the Sitecore forms inside our headless application? So the answer for this question is no. We can make use of the Sitecore forms inside our headless solution. But how? Let's say this. So uh, here the concept of Sitecore embeddable forms comes into picture. So let's first understand what is Sitecore embeddable forms. All right. So Sitecore embeddable forms lets you display the Sitecore forms on any web page. All right. It helps you display any forms that are not even working on the Sitecore application itself. So yeah. So what does this framework embeddable form framework use? So embeddable form framework make use of lit library. So let's not go into this lit library again. There are many libraries. So out of which lit library. So let's like quickly see what is lit library and what is the use of it. So lit library is basically a JavaScript template library that enables creation of template using JavaScript tag literals and tag functions. That's it. Let's not go deep into it, like how to use it and all. Then it makes use of Tailwind CSS. I believe you might have heard of Tailwind CSS. It is similar to the Bootstrap, but in a more enhanced way. It uses post CSS and then again it makes some optimization and all. So let's not go again deep into the Tailwind CSS, but it is a great tool, great framework to use. It supports accessibility. It even works on narration tools such as screen readers, and also Sitecore embeddable forms don't affect your any of the functionality or any of the styles on your page, right? So you can make use of it when you're using SSG with REST or GraphQL layout service. So the prerequisites for using the Sitecore embeddable forms is like you must be using Sitecore 10.3 or later versions, and you must be using Sitecore Headless service 21.0.0 and above. Okay, so these are the two prerequisites for using Sitecore embeddable forms. All right, then let's see how to implement the form using the Sitecore embeddable form framework. Right. So Sitecore embeddable form framework. So to implement Sitecore embeddable form framework, you need to download the Sitecore embeddable form framework from the Sitecore. So go to Sitecore downloads and just search it for Sitecore embeddable forms. You'll get Sitecore embeddable forms. You can download those. Download that. After downloading, you need to extract and you need to copy two things from there: the CSS folder and a JS file. So the name of JS file is Sitecore embeddable Sitecore-embeddable forms.umd.js. Now you need to copy these two JS file and CSS file, and you need to place it inside your web application directory. So in my case, if my web application is in cnetpub some location test cm dot, so I'll paste it there, see inetpub www root at that location itself. All right. So once you copy that, the JS file and CSS file, you can make use of Sitecore embeddable forms. It is that pretty simple to use Sitecore embeddable forms. Then how to display it, or like how can you use the Sitecore embeddable forms? So for that, to make use of Sitecore embeddable forms or to display forms on your web page, you need to add a script tag that refers to the embeddable form script. All right, I'll show you about this. what script I'm referring to, and how can we refer it inside our Next.js or Next.js implementation itself. Then add a SCF form tag. See, add a SCF form tag. So this is similar to the HTML tag, div tag, p tag. Now this SCF form tags comes from the lit library, which Sitecore Embeddable Forms is using. Since lit library is a JavaScript template littering library, templating library. So they might have created a tag for it named SCF form tag to specify the Sitecore form item. So all right, then let's see the HTML implementation, basic implementation. How can you embed a Sitecore forms inside any of the web page? All right. So this is basic HTML structure, and just focus on this part, SCEF hyphen form. This is where I was talking about the tag SCEF form. Then we are passing here the form ID. All right. And closing the tag. And this is the script which like we were referring to HTTPS, this script, embeddable form script. And here we have passed the API key. So this is my look. So this can vary accordingly. So let's say now, if you are having 100 different forms, so then how can we reference it inside our application or inside our rendering? Can like anyone like tell about this? All right, let me tell you. So if there are 100 different forms, you need not to you need not to make reference or need to add the SCEF form tag 100 times. You can make it dynamic using Next.js. You can have the simple code inside our Next.js only, but this will refer to only the one form ID. But then how to make the dynamic? So whenever you add 100 different forms, if you're having a Sitecore 100 Sitecore forms, and you need to always make it dynamic, like whenever I add a form rendering, it should pick that form and display it using embeddable forms. Then how can you do it? So to do it, you can create a Next.js implementation. So this way you can make it dynamic. So I'll explain you this code. So basically I'm using here dynamic props, a dictionary props, you can say it. I'll not name them. So this way I've created a props for it. And now focus on this part, props.rendering.fields.form IT, form item IT. So if you want your Sitecore, if you want your forms to display it on a page, you need to create a JSON rendering first of all. I'm assuming like when you create a JSON rendering, make sure you choose the
बोल रहा
data
है
source.
जो नंबर है उसको जो तुम कंपेयर करना चाहते हो लाओ
Make sure you use the data source template as data
ऐसे भी
source
कर सकते
template location as
हो जो
forms.
नेगेटिव नंबर है उसको कंपेयर करने के लिए एब्सोल्यूट वैल्यू कर दो टू कंपेयरिंग द नेगेटिव इंटीजर कंसीडर द एब्सोल्यूट वैल्यू
Like who's this? Can you please be on mute? I can't see your name. Okay, thank you. All right. So once you select the data source as the forms location, then make sure you use rendering content resolver, since you'll get the since you'll get the data in using the in the layout service using rendering content resolver. All right. So once you do it, then props.rendering .fill.form item ID, this you will get inside your props. Then once you reference the data source location correctly, this way you can fetch the form item ID from the form itself. Then I've created a inside React using this way. So this is the simple implementation. Like this way you can make your form dynamic, and if you're using n number of forms, you can use it this way. Create a JSON rendering out of it, and it will directly keep on referencing each and every forms wherever you add it. All right, then all right, let's see the points to consider when using Sitecore embeddable forms. So whenever you are using Sitecore embeddable forms, you must be using Sitecore 10.3 or above version. Then You must be using Sitecore Headless Service 21.0.0 and later. And just to make just to make a note, like Sitecore Embeddable Forms doesn't support XDB exclusive features, that is trigger goals, summit action, performance tracking, robot detection, etc. All right. So let's see about the common known errors. So don't think this as an image. So this is itself an error. So if you implement the Sitecore Embeddable Forms, and if you see this type of loader getting appear on your screen, that means you are missing a CSS, the CSS folder, which we earlier saw. Like we need to copy two things, JS file and CSS. So you're missing this CSS folder inside your web application directory. All right. So once you placed it, you won't see this loader appearing. Okay. Again, this might come up inside your Next.js application also, where you'll see this loader getting appeared. So for that, you just need to copy that CSS folder and paste it inside your Next.js application so that it can reference the CSS and download it, like use the CSS. So this way you can fix this issue. And just a pro tip, whenever you download the Sitecore embeddable forms, do not try to rename the file or folder name. It gives error and you'll see this type of loader. All right, then. Right. So now we are seeing like two different approaches of using Sitecore forms inside our headless application. Right. So can anyone spot differences between two of them? Like what is the difference between the Sitecore JSS forms and the embeddable forms? All right. Then let's do a comparative analysis of Sitecore JSS forms and Sitecore embeddable forms. So Sitecore JSS forms, for Sitecore JSS, to use Sitecore JSS forms, you need to make use of SSR. This is mandatory. So with embeddable forms, you can make use of SSR or SSG, either. JSS form, using JSS form, you must make use of REST layout service. But with embeddable forms, this is not the case. You can make either REST layout service or GraphQL layout service. So JSS forms helps you display only Sitecore forms, but embeddable forms you can display any forms, even if it is not working on Sitecore application as well. So JSS form supports XDB exclusive feature, and embeddable forms doesn't support XDB exclusive features. All right. So this is the comparative analysis between JSS forms and Sitecore embeddable forms. Make wise decision whenever you use this embeddable forms or JSS form package. All right. So then let's see how. So any questions or any queries so far in this embeddable forms? All right. So let's then see how can we integrate third-party forms inside our Sitecore application, headless application. So there are multiple third-party application, third-party like, media lab forms available, like which you can integrate it. So I'll take a few example in this session, but I'm going to demo you how you can use Sitecore send forms inside your headless application. This is where I'll be focusing on implementing the Sitecore send forms inside your headless application. So whenever if you want to add a third-party form in form scripts forms, so it usually comes up. This can be done using adding a script inside your Next.js application. That's all. Your form will be rendered. Simple. It's that simple. Like simply embed a script inside your Next.js application, and that's it. So if you can see, I mentioned a Sitecore send. This is the Sitecore send. Py.forms. This comes from the Salesforce. This also you can use it, and Bravo, many marketing tools available. You can make any use of it. You can use it. So in this session, our focus will be using the Sitecore send form. So I won't go much deep inside the Sitecore send. and we'll just see like if a form is created inside a Sitecore send, how can we make use of that form inside our Sitecore headless application. So to make use of Sitecore send form inside our headless application, there are many ways to do it, out of which one way is using the script. So that is what I'm referring to here, is you can make use of script inside your Sitecore headless application using this way. So this script comes with, so whenever you create a form in Sitecore send provide you a script, and it will provide you some tracking ID and all. So you just inject this script inside your head tag, and that's all. And try to render, try to check your page. The form will be rendered there. So this was it related to the Sitecore send integration. So any questions, queries? We are towards the end of this session. So if you have any question or queries, you can.
Hello everyone. Anyone has questions for Manoj? I'll take it as no then. So Manoj, I think you have covered a good session here, and maybe people will need some time to go through and understand if they have any questions. Maybe they can reach out to you on LinkedIn, or maybe reach out to us through WhatsApp channel, and we can direct that questions to you.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining us today and taking out your time on a weekend to attend this webinar. We thank everyone for joining us, and thanks to Manoj especially for presenting at SCG Pune. We have a couple of webinars planned for this month, so stay tuned. Thanks everyone and happy weekend.
Thank you, everyone.